name is Babajide Duroshola. Currently general manager for Copa in Nigeria. Studied engineering, which was very interesting in university, and then had a brief stint in HR. Well, when I mean brief, I mean 8 years in HR. Then I moved into technology, where I was a community manager at Andala, and then helped Save Border expand to Nigeria. While now working at Copa. Be family man. I have two sons and very excited about like investing and thinking around like the future too as well. One thing I'm very big on is like generating wealth for myself and for the next generation after me. So for me, that really like drives how I think about money, how I think about spending, how I think about investing as a whole. So that's who I am in a nutshell. The journey really started in my fourth year when I went to do internship in the then Skybank. I think I was working in the IT department and I just hated it. So I knew that, computer engineering wasn't for me. But, you had gone to school, you had chased a degree. So what I did was I finished. And when I was done, I was looking for what the next best thing was that I was going to really love and love doing. And so an opportunity came up for me to be like a data entry analyst to, when consultants go out, they collect business cards back in the day, and then they need to knock in those business cards into a digital format. So that was my job. I was doing the data entry of all that. And then I was very diligent at that, and I somewhat moved into the consulting side where I was then working on client projects. After spending 4 years doing that, I moved into the industry with Access Bank where I was in HR, and then moved to like projects and transformation on HR projects, more or less like business operating processes around HR. And then moved to talent acquisition before I got a break to move into technology, which was a funny story I would talk about some other time. And then I moved to Andela to help Andela scale its presence across Africa as the first community manager at Andela. I did that for about 2 years plus, and then an opportunity came for me to actually help an East African country company move down to West Africa. So during my time at Andela, I spent so much time between East and West Africa, especially around recruiting technical talents, whether it was in Kenya, Uganda, or Rwanda, and in Lagos, Nigeria. So that was the window for East Africa for me. And so I took the job to bring the Okada hailing business down to Nigeria and then build Safe Border. Managed that for 2 years, and then another opportunity came for me to work in a company that had a mission that I was really, really interested in, which was around providing credit to the underbanked or underserved community. And so I just took that opportunity to help Copa build and get here. So that's the journey in a in a short form, and yeah. Right from early on, I've always been passionate about saving and keeping money. I grew up. I should have grown up in wealth because my father was wealthy, but I grew up in a more or less separated household, and so I'd seen what poverty was like, and I've seen what wealth was like too as well. And then growing up with uncles who you knew that had a lot of money, and then later on, the money wasn't there anymore. I took a very big interest in saving and investing. And so from my early career point, I always had a culture of putting something away, whether it was something for the rainy day or just putting something away. And then the something small that I kept on putting away started to become massive and started to become big and large and became sizable for me to do a lot of things. And so initially my foray into investing after saving a lot of money was into treasury bills back then, when the government treasury bills were around 22% year on year return. It was very sweet money then. And so I kept on doing that. And it became very interesting when you save, you invest that money, you get the returns, you get the interest, and then you now compound it again. And so that was where I learned the effect of compounding your wealth. And so I started doing that, and the more I started climbing the corporate ladder and earning more, the more I started exploring other investment opportunities. And that got me into angel investing. I think that was in 2020, where I knew nothing about the space, but I knew that there were a lot of hot technology companies that were looking for people to actually like back them. People who had great ideas but needed money to start putting a company together. And so I started doing angel investing on the side. I remember it all started from a tweet where I put out a tweet that I think this year in 2020 I was going to start investing in companies. And so at that point, I started getting people who were putting me on deal flows, like, hey, someone needs a check here. So you write like maybe 2,000, 3,000. Then it just kind of like took a life of its own. It's been very interesting, like you have so many amazing companies too as well. I think one of my first three checks was even in Rise. So like for me, it's a very passionate story around it because like I started investing in companies that I was a user of the product or I believed in the product too as well. And so you have a lot of companies who are changing the way things are done, how business is done in Africa, especially in Nigeria too as well. And they're like solving interesting problems. And so for me, there was nothing I could do than just to back those people because most times if I give them money, like, I can always sit down, check in and say, what problems are you trying to solve too as well. It became a way for me to actually offer advice to startups because I realized that for them to bring me on their books is quite expensive for them. But if I did invest a little bit of money, then I get closer to the founder and then we're able to have conversations around, oh, here's how you build a technology company in Africa. And like I always say, like if you check my LinkedIn, you check everywhere, I always say I don't think I ever want to build my own company, but what I want to do is I want to help other founders scale their companies. So I'm playing in that space and angel investing allows me to help them scale their company, scale their product, have money to hire the right talent too as well, and then give them advice here and there when they need it. Yes, the things about startup is the ideas can change, the market can change, the dynamics, the product can change. But what doesn't really change is the ability of the team to execute. And so for me, those are like the big things that like when people say, oh, you're writing an angel check, which is like the first entry friends and family round check. There's no revenue, nothing. How do you know that it's going to work? Most of the time, it won't work. Sometimes it will work. But one thing that is very critical is when you look at the kind of companies I invest in, the founders play a huge role. The ability to execute, the ability to build a solid team around them is like that's what I really look out for before I even actually put like the product can change, the vision can change, but once you know that you have people who have the capacity to execute, then it becomes a lot easier because even if they change what the product is supposed to do or maybe move from a B2C company to a B2B company and they pivot, that ability to execute that pivot is very, very important. So for me, that's the most important thing. Yeah, so it becomes very expensive really quickly too as well. And remember, it's not like I'm like I have a fund somewhere. It's like money that I work for from my 9 to 5 job and then put it somewhere. And then I think it's also a phase of where I am in my life. Like now, when I started this, I only had a son. Now I have 2 sons. And then now you need to now start building wealth for the next generation. Well, companies provide that, it's a bit of a gamble. But like with traditional investment and traditional instruments, you can actually just invest, leave it, and watch it compound over time. And you know that your returns are somewhat guaranteed, unlike the startups where tomorrow it could all go bust and then you're left with nothing. So because of where I am as like a dad, then that actually moved my focus. Like when I build wealth for my kids, then I can come back into the foreign to do investments. And also, let me watch the investments that already have the angels checks that I've written. Let's see some of those start returning, and then maybe we can then now use that money to invest in more companies. Okay, so traditional instruments are less volatile. The returns are less compared to like angel investing. So you invest in a company, you have multiple folds, especially when you come in very, very early in the company, it gives you a larger possibility of a bigger exit too as well. Meanwhile, with the traditional investment, it's like planting a seed. You watch it, you keep watering it and you keep watching it grow. It's not just going to go from a seed to a tree. It's like going to go, and so those are like the major differences between those two type of investments too as well. It's very good, like when you have your own fund or you're able to raise money to create a fund and then you start deploying that capital into other business. But like for a individual investor, it becomes really expensive quickly because like when you write what 20, 30 checks at 2000 2000 each, you can see how that quickly compounds too as well. Like you have a possibility that all of them will go bust. You have a possibility that one will cover for the entire money that you spent on the 20 companies that you've invested. But like if you put that money in a much more traditional instrument, you compound that over a couple of years and you think very, very long term horizon. I think the similarities for both is that they're both very long term horizon prods. So you don't invest money that you need tomorrow or next year. You invest money that you're willing to like look away for a very long time so that you let the money work. So I've been using Rise for what, 3 years plus now. Then I think I remember coming across Rise when it was an old name. I think was when it was the Cash Estate, and then it became Rise, and so that was when I was looking to do more foreign currency investments. Because most of the things I used to do at that point in time were more local currency, so naira denominated investments. And so I moved into foreign currency investments and I was looking for where the ease. Like I'd been doing some traditional banks, putting in like FX in there, but like the rates weren't as good. The process to even get the money into the bank was a lot. And so my journey with Rise started March 2020. So I reached out to the founders and I'm like, hey, like I've been hearing about your product. Would you be willing to talk me through it? Here's how much like I'm looking to invest in the next couple of years. I think that was even the reason why they responded to me, because I was like very specific on how much I was looking to invest in the next couple of years. And so we had a conversation, walked me through the process, and then I decided to like onboard and sign up. And then I think I've been a very happy user, I would say. So I think I've seen 3 iterations of the app, so it's been very interesting for me. In as much as like I understand the fundamentals, every day I open my Rise app. Like I wake up in the morning and I even know to the T to the time when you guys actually do the system refresh on like the previous day's earnings will now show. Too. So I just open it and I just see the movement, because for me, the investing has now become like a game. So where I'm seeing the movement and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what this news had on the stock market, or oh, what's going on with our real estate portfolio? Like, why did I get this return this month versus the previous month too as well? And then I think what even now drew me more into the app was now that like you have more news feeds where I can actually like see stories, watch. So I just got more engaged with the app. I think that's what I love most about the app. The fact that I can just like sit, watch a video on the app, watch other people talk about their money experience too as well. I have all the asset classes. So like I have all the asset classes. Um It's what is making me more money that is my favorite. So there was a point where stocks were my favorite, but now it's my least favorite because, like, yes, if I talk about, I remember one time chatting with one of the co-founders of Rise, and I sent him, "Hey, here's how much I've lost on stock," and he's like, "Ah, that shouldn't be happening." I'm like, "Well, it's happening." But for me, my favorite right now is the real estate. Because like every seventh, I know that like okay, we're going to get like an alert to say the returns have been paid. And I like to see the interesting things, especially around home rentals and how we're thinking about like maybe the Airbnb rental space, or like the traditional rental space too as well. But I really love all three of them, and I ensure that like I kind of like keep a balanced view, especially in like savings on each of them. So some months I go very heavy on like stocks, other months I go very heavy on like um, real estate, and then for the fixed income, fund it the way the fixed income works. Just put something there every other time for it to count. So I always typically tell them like you're doing angel investing, think long term. Um, Always have a balanced portfolio. Like the way I think about it, and like from a portfolio perspective, there was a time my angel investing was about like I would say 40% of my portfolio. Today is around 10% of my portfolio too as well. So always have like a balanced portfolio mix, especially if you're someone who, you're working a 9 to 5 job and are using it to invest too as well. Understand the risk of angel investing. So many times I've told people angel investing is not mutual funds. You see people who say, "Oh, if I put this money in this company, so when do I get the return?" I'm like, you can't get that return until there is a liquidity event. If there's ever any liquidity event, the money gets stuck in there. So you need to understand that, and also do your due diligence, do your homework about the company that you're about to invest in. Don't go and don't fall for hype, because like I think one thing that has become very interesting is how we've become hype men in the Nigerian tech ecosystem. So always do your due diligence. It's very, very important. And the last thing that I'll say is always have a long-term horizon. Like think about it in like, if I leave this money for 7 years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, is it possible for me to leave this money? Can I forget about the money for that long? It's very important. So I think first will be achieving equity first in the work environment, because like you rightly said it's the capacity to earn more. Like once we start to have more equity in the uh, office environment or in the business setting, then they come to the table. Then we can then now start to think of like, okay, how can you save more, invest more? Like, but that income equity or that income gap has to be closed like really, really quick. And so these are where like companies need to take more actions around driving diversity and inclusion, especially on the gender gap within organizations too as well. These are where we need to start thinking about more programs that can actually increase the capacity to earn. Women are amazing. They do like so many things. Like you see, in fact, there's so many studies that once you have a balanced board, the companies has 2 times more returns to succeed compared to like companies that are just full male dominated. And so for us to be able to anchor on that, and one thing, and maybe this is money, we start to look at how much money is being lost because we are not including women. There was a study I saw that it showed that we were losing $2 billion because women weren't. So maybe when we start to attack it from a profit and loss perspective on like money that is being lost because women are not as included, maybe that's when we would all start to get it.